Attentive as a fish.
What is your non-negotiable in a relationship when it comes to power and control?
Power and control. I've never thought of like power and control like so actively where I'm like, I am a non-negotiable. Obviously, I don't want a woman who's a man because I'd date a man if I wanted a man.
What do you mean, a woman who's a man?
Like a woman who's bossy, who does orders, has attitude, who
I don't
tries.
have attitude.
You have attitude.
Yeah, boss.
No, you don't have attitude. You're an cooperative person that I can speak to.
Cooperative meaning you can tell me what to do and I
No,
just
that's
obey.
not cooperative. Like you know, one of the challenges that women don't understand about being submissive and cooperative, they assume that being submissive is having somebody bark orders at you, tell you, you do this, you do this. That's not submission. That's just, I don't know, madness in my view. If you have a decent guy, cooperation submission basically looks like just being cooperative, having a conversation with each other, working together towards whatever it is that you want. And I always ask myself when people say like, I don't want to submit or like submission is this, what is, give me an example of where submission is required. I've never, okay, maybe it's because I've never had to submit, so I don't know consciously, but I've never seen a situation between you and I where you had to like submit to something. Generally, it's like, okay, dude, I've drawn a boundary, but you draw boundaries too. We've had an agreement on something, but we have agreements on a lot of things all the time. Where has it where you had to say, oh, yeah, like it's like yeah, like I'm trying to think where does oh Jesus, like I don't know where that would actually ever happen between you and I actually.
I think in a black tradition context,
Ashling?
I think in a black context, there's a lot of seeing submission as having control over a person in a sense of I have dominion over you. I remote control you to tell you what
Jesus
to do, how
Christ.
to do it. Because our parents, when we grew up, that was what was control, what was being like having authority over a person, having control. That's what we saw being kids, being dictated to as having that sense of like, oh, you are now being controlled by another or having being submissive. Even in like olden day sort of like marriages, that was what was having like being submissive to a husband is like you cook, you clean. The husband comes back with the chicken underneath his wing. He's like, yeah, I'm fast pegala, and then you're like, yeah, wozala, do the thing. Come back, man.
But is that not him also being submissive to the wife in the sense that he needs to go out and work. He needs to do things and provide. He needs to submit to the needs of the family. Like everybody has a role. Like you have to
I
play your
understand
role.
that. I think the role part of it is not a thing more than the actual expression of the roles. One seeming to be having control over the other. In a sense of you're not speaking to me how you'd speak to a person that you compassionately care about. There's a standoffish behavior to you and how you interact with me. Even in our conversation, it's like I'm speaking down at you because you're lower than me.
In my humble opinion, I don't think that has anything to do with submission. I think that's more a question of people who don't know how to treat other people very well and how to interact with them with a positive energy. And I get what you mean. Like in a lot of relationships, people have a thing of speaking down to each other. They enter into combative situations, trying to make the other person yield to their control and their authority and their worldview. Like, you disagree with me, how dare you? Like, we're watching TV and this sports team is the one that I like, so you have to like it. Just a very simple example of like submit to my desires, this and that. I get that, but I don't think that actually has anything to do with submission. I think those are just people who are crazy and emotionally stunted, like they've never grown emotionally. From my perspective, submission is literally what are the requirements of the relationship of this other person in order for it to work. I, as a guy, on a daily basis, have to submit to something actually that you want, which is the success of the relationship that relies on me working hard. Every day, I have to submit myself to that request. Otherwise, the relationship actually completely falls apart. The same thing with your role. You have to submit to the role that's required for the relationship to work in order for me to stay here. Just like I have to submit to the requirements in order for you to stay here. And I think, like scripture says it so well, where both husbands and wives submit to each other. And the instruction is obviously wives respect husbands because husbands care a lot about respect. Guys care a lot about respect. And from a guy's perspective, a woman can't love you if she doesn't respect you. But a guy, from a woman's perspective, if a guy loves you, he has to treat you well. I don't understand how can someone say "Ngiyakuthanda" or "I love you," but the way they speak to you, it demeans you as a person. That doesn't make sense. That's just a really toxic setup, and I think that setup is so common that people assume that is what a relationship is. A good, thriving, positive relationship should be the wife with a smile on her face. Now, I'm not a believer in happy wife, happy life. That's complete BS. But if you're a guy who's doing well and you're treating your family right, one of the signs of that, if I walk into your house, your wife will be glowing and smiling. Why? Because she looks at her man and says, life just flows with this man. And she's not feeling demeaned at all. Now, she knows what she has to do. There's certain requirements to make life easier for the man. So he can submit what he has to submit to his wife. Because think about it like this. If I'm working on a daily basis from 6 in the morning until 7 at night, obviously I'm not going to be doing house chores. That just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I'm trying to submit to our desires here of achieving material success. So I don't have the space or the mental capacity to do house chores. As part of your roles, you're going to have to do house chores. You have to submit to that duty of doing house chores. Now, someone might argue and say, well, what if it was the other way around, that you're working and I'm not working? I don't think that relationship would even actually occur because most women don't like a guy who's not working or who's not making money or doing something productive with themselves. I know it's very common these days to have the stay-at-home dad or whatever it is, but it is a very, very rare thing that a woman will say, I'm going to select a guy who's doing worse off than me financially. It's just a very rare thing. So that setup anyway doesn't happen very often. So yes, we can have a conversation about it, but it's so rare that it's almost pointless to have the conversation in the first place. So for people, submission for me always generally comes with a positive approach. It's done with cheerfulness. Like, so if you say, Omega, you need to work harder, I don't take that as an offense. I will take that with cheerfulness because that's what I need to submit to for the relationship. If I say, yo, dude, when I come back home, please have the dishes and this done so that way I can eat dinner quickly and do whatever, relax, whatever you and I can talk and all that sort of stuff. You have to submit yourself to that. Those are the requirements of the relationship, and that's the role that you've been placed in. Leyo ukuthi siyadonsa manje siyabanjwa enza lokho, that's just toxic. I don't think that's submission. That's just toxic. But that's the way people know relationships. So that's all we know.
I think the biggest challenge for women is getting out of that sense of looking at female male dynamics or relationship dynamics in a manner where there's somebody who has power over somebody or has control over somebody, or like if you are in a relationship then this person is your boss sort of narrative. I think there's a lot of maybe employer-employee context that we've put into relationships that now require that sense of battling with each other to kind of see who's in control here. Because everywhere else there's sort of like a hierarchical sort of system of working with each other, which works, which is also needed in the relationship. There is some sort of hierarchical system that's there as well in order for the relationship to work. But when we fix each other to just be those sort of like positions and not be flexible to actually have that work for us, the positions and the roles work for us, but also know that we are also more than those roles and there are things that we have to be flexible about in those roles. That's where the challenge comes in, when we're rigid and just like, this is it. Finally, umfazi wenza nje, indoda yenza nje, and then that's the life. It brings a lot of rigidity, which actually brings
people become very combative towards each other because they start to view the other as a thing to be overcome, which is very unfortunate. For me, like being in a leadership role in the relationship, I believe that if you are going to say, I am the leader in the relationship, be very careful of that statement. Being the leader also means you're the person who has to make sure that the positive energy in the relationship is always there. It's part of your main duties. It's like this. If you're CEO of a company and your employees are unhappy, you're doing something wrong. It is very, very important that you keep the culture of the company a positive spirit, a positive place where people are happy to come through, be productive, work, do their parts, get paid their money, and smile on the way out, smile on the way in and day out. The most successful companies in the world have a positive company culture, And when I say the world, I mean like the real successful ones, like your Googles, your Apples, etc. They have a very positive company culture. Not all of them, but most of them do. So if you say I'm the leader in the relationship, okay, my guy, you better make sure there's positive energy in this place because that's going to be one of your duties. Most people, when they think of leadership, they don't think of it as a form of service. They think a leader is a person who's to be served, which is what has gone wrong in our country politically. People think being president means that you are king and ruler. We got rid of kings because we didn't want to serve people. We wanted public servants who would serve the society as a whole. The same is true in a relationship. If I say I'm the leader of the relationship, then it means I must be prepared to serve my bum off here. I must work hard to produce the materials of relationships. So the food, the housing, the transportation, the insurances, make sure the investments, make sure the pensions are done right, make sure the relationship is growing and progressing properly. I have to set a clear track. I have to consult with the people that follow me, so you, and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking of, I want to do. Is this something that works for you guys? Let's make it happen. Here's maybe the role I need you to play in having this thing happen. And I have to take on the burden that when things go wrong, you have to turn around and say, oh, Mac, why have things go wrong? And I have to have some good answers. That is leadership, not me sitting on the couch being serviced all day long. Now, of course, as part of taking the burdens of leadership, there are a few privileges.